Recording, great. All right, hello everyone. Again, we do not have sound or video, unfortunately, today for the room, but we have Steve, Paul, and Rob all in the room. So we're having a little holiday PowerShell community call. We're glad that you've all joined us. I know it's a little fun, and we appreciate everybody that's been able to hop on the call today. So let's dive right in. I think, Sean, I'm just going to go ahead and open the floor to you to talk about the documentation repo move, so we can just knock that one out.
Yeah, so our current target date is January 16th. I believe that's a Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We're planning on moving the PowerShell docs repo out of the PowerShell org and into the Microsoft Docs org. This is the first step in getting us set up for further improvements to documentation. All the tooling for publishing is set up to work with the Microsoft Docs org, and we'll be in a better space there. GitHub will automatically redirect if you use the old URL, but it's always a best practice to repoint your remotes. I'll be drafting a blog article to announce all of this and give instructions, so stay tuned for that. It'll happen after the first of the year, but just wanted to use this opportunity to get that out again.
Yeah, so update these. You're going to want your new, well, a lot of you probably call this one upstream, but your origin
people
for
do
me,
it correctly.
not how good teachers know how to do it. This is, you'll want to change this one to Microsoft Docs, basically.
Right.
Cool. And like Sean said, we're going to get better CI and get better tooling with the internal stuff, so that we can accelerate our docs faster. You guys want to talk to the Docathon V2 on that note?
Yeah, so we had it, I feel like it was 2 weeks ago now. I don't remember.
It was Friday.
Yes. Was it last Friday?
Yeah, 6 days ago.
Yeah. All right, fine. Holidays just it's like time travel. Yeah, so we got like 9 PRs open, I think it was, and I think Sean has already merged all of them by now, I think.
Yep.
Which includes, I think that includes Rob's documentation of the configuration JSON file.
Yes.
As well as the documentation on how to write and or port your PowerShell modules to work across Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 4. It's PowerShell.config.json. So anyway, definitely got some new content up. We still have, I forget what check the numbers, but we still have a number of high priority items still remain. So we'll probably have to do another one after the New Year. Get those knocked out. But anyways, yeah, so we improved our documentation, I think, pretty good with the number of people we had here. We have about half my team is already on vacation.
I went into that last quarter and did some things.
Yeah, it was awesome. Unfortunately, I was not there for it. I was also on vacation, but I am happy with the output. So the PowerShell 6.2 release.
All right.
So this one's coming out roughly in March of next year. As we've said before, there aren't any major feature improvements happening here, and for various support lifecycle reasons that we'll get into in a minute, we've chosen to stay on .NET Core 2.1, which is an LTS release of .NET Core. Sorry, you sounded like you were ready to.
No, so the only thing I want to mention is, so we'll probably have our last preview release in January, probably mid-January, given the holidays. And then we should have a release candidate in February, and then we'll have G8 in March, assuming everything goes well. Of course, if there's any major issue, customer feedback, then the dates may shift, but roughly that's what we're looking at. So do expect that we probably won't take a huge number of changes between the next preview and the release candidate, and a smaller set of changes between the release candidate and G8. And then we'll move for 6.3.
And this will be built on top of Core 2.1, which is an LTS So, we've not been watching the chat very well, have we?
I haven't seen anything.
Nothing yet? Okay. Cool. So full no camera, totally. So this is one where I kind of want to open the floor up a little bit just for the folks on the call. And you know, if somebody wants to give a longer form answer here, I'm happy to let you unmute and speak to this a little bit. But basically, want to know, like, has the support lifecycle been working for you guys? You know, do you need a longer support lifecycle? Is it long enough today? You know, is the fix forwardness of having to upgrade PowerShell every 6 months a deal breaker, or are you all in environments where that's fairly easy? You know, we've got telemetry that shows that people are moving forward to new versions of PowerShell quite rapidly. What is this, via GitHub BI?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you look in the lower right corner here, you know, you'll see the 6.1 usage start to subsume the 6.1 preview. The 6.0 usage has remained somewhat constant. We're hoping to see this drop a little bit more over time. But basically, we think from this image that people have figured out an upgrade workflow that works for them. But we still want to, talk to you guys and kind of understand if you do want an LTS. And I would ask you this, Christoph. Why that is, right? Like what an LTS would look like. How long is useful enough for it to be useful? So let's just look at what's happening in our cadence of OS and app releases. They are slowing them down. I'm not sure which ones you mean there. Is that are you talking about Windows? Or are you talking about Windows? Okay. Yeah, I mean, Windows has sort of gone in both directions. I think, in some cases, some of those have been, in reaction to sort of lack of stability in some cases. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on around the November or October, I guess, update 1809 that has, prompted updates to slow down a little bit. But I wonder if we have the same issues that require that we slow down as well, or if it's really just sounds like not a ton of opinion on this.
So do keep in mind, like, one thing that Joey didn't explicitly mention, that 6.0 support will be coming out of support in a couple months. So those of you who probably not on the call because you guys are like bleeding edge, right? If you're still on 6.0, then you will have to move forward because we won't be providing security updates post-February, I believe, for 6.0.
So keep in mind, today our support lifecycle is not that we support for 6 months, it's that we release every 6 months and support until for 6 months past the last one. So it's generally coming out to a year and a quarter so far. I know that that's still probably pretty aggressive considering, 100,000 seats or, really large enterprises. But we're trying to understand if there's really any blockers around this. Is anybody not updated because, or moved to PowerShell Core because of the lifecycle problem? We're looking at essentially getting closer to .NET's support model, right? And we haven't defined what this means yet, or how exactly we're going to do it, but we're probably going to make some calls about, hey, if .NET is releasing an LTS, then we probably want to snap to that LTS. They're today supporting those for about 3 years, and we want to line up with that, or does it make sense for us to or not? And so that's sort of the question that we're asking ourselves, and I'd love to get more feedback from you guys as it comes up over the next couple months. But we'll be publishing an RFC to sort of talk about this and try and get some feedback from you guys before we make a hard call. Question here is whether PowerShell Core version updates will be included in Windows updates.
You want me to answer that?
I can update it partially, I think.
Sure.
So first, it's important to note the distinction between Windows Update and Microsoft Update. The latter is what's actually used by Windows Update. to pull in updates for stuff that did not ship with the operating system. And so today, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but we will ship updates via Microsoft Update for critical security fixes.
Yes.
But we will not,
We've not had yet.
due to the cost of shipping the Delta packages for a wide variety of platforms and versions, we have not today been publishing updates for just minor or patch version releases that do not have critical security updates, which again has been all of them.
Yes.
So this is something I would like for us to figure out at some point. But we've of course made no secrets about the fact that at some point we may decide or figure out how we're going to ship into Windows, and so at that point I think we'd have a much better servicing story as a built-in Windows component. But it's not necessarily, or it might not be worth the cost in the meantime of getting it routed to that point. And of course, we'd also love to see, some kind of package management, solution, or we may at some point blush chocolatey as a way to do these things, to say, hey, if you want to update with chocolatey, here's, the supported mechanism for doing that or whatever. So we've floated all this stuff in the past, but I think we're really trying to figure out our support lifecycle that will drive our shipping vehicle, that will drive the any new update or servicing improvements. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. So what Joy mentioned was it is right now incredibly complicated and expensive to actually produce a patch update to an MSI. So one of the things we're looking at post 6.2 is moving to MSI X, which is like a new next-gen MSI thing, which one of the things they solve is be able to produce these patch updates automatically for us. So look forward to that in the 6.3 timeframe when we start that work and see if it actually pans out.
Cool. Sue said, Heyman mentioned on one of the Ignite sessions that VS Code would eventually replace PowerShell ISC. Is there anywhere in GitHub where one can point out the ISC features one misses in VS Code? I think, Rob, didn't we have an issue at some point tracking that? The VS Code PowerShell deltas between with ISC?
Yeah, well, it's
ISC
not
parity.
one issue, it's a label.
It's a label, even better. Let me go ahead and just post that to you then. Is that in VS Code PowerShell or Editor Services?
VS Code PowerShell.
Cool.
I'm trying to think what the label is. ISE
Parity.
compatibility, ISE parity, something like that. We've written a new doc as well. There you go, compatibility.
So there will likely be more things populating this at some point. But I think if you look in this repo as well, if you just search for ISC, oh god, there's a million.
Yeah, there's lots.
So,
because not everything is possible, and we've tried to update our documentation recently to be more explicit about what is and isn't possible, and what we think is it's feasible within a shorter time frame, and what isn't. We've written a new doc for starting out of the ISE. It's under docs and it's in the changelog that was released today. There's a link to it.
oh, cool.
So if you're coming from the ISE, you can go to that doc.
You're saying that's in the changelog here?
Yeah, so if you go to this changelog, that one, then there.
Hey, this is also a great resource. Awesome. This got done while I was not here, huh? It's Friday?
Which?
You did this one on Friday?
Yeah. This release I did today, this morning. But we wrote this doc
Awesome.
last week just because a lot of people open issues and a lot of these things are already solved. So, and I linked to, the changelog also says, if you want to make an edit, please do. Because we're definitely not the experts in, making your environment more suitable to you. So.
Yes, absolutely. So, the package manager, yeah. So just to close this one out, yeah, like there are a few differences that will never be sort of closed, but a lot of this stuff will make it much more ISC like. And Rob and Tyler have been doing a very good job, and I think Sydney's on the call. I think kind of unwinding some of the stability issues that I know you guys have been struggling with. I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, Sydney, but if there's any words you want to add there, feel free.
Yeah, I missed what you started with, so I don't want to repeat. But yeah, we'll have a new update on the extension. And as you mentioned, a lot of hard work from community members and Rob and Tyler going into that. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So I'll make sure this stuff makes it into the notes here, and then we can move on to the MSIX. I think I was aware of the down level issue. I think there's it would be nice to automatically update. The problem that we have there is typically when we talk to enterprise customers, the bigger more important thing is that they have visibility that updates are needed, because they want to make the decision on their own and have understanding of what's happening there. So we had talked about having an interactive mechanism from being hey, you need to update and click this button or run this command or whatever. But I think the reality is that that's not as useful to widespread enterprise customers, and it's also really tricky to get right, surprisingly, just because you don't want to be hitting the network all the time at startup, and we're working through that. So I think being in Windows is probably as much as I beat the drum for years that we wanted to get out of Windows so we can upgrade faster. I think that is probably the cleanest update mechanism, but we want to make sure that we can keep our agility and stay up to date if we go back in. So question here about Outgrid View. Do you know anything about Outgrid View in VS Code? I know we'll get this back in PowerShell with NetCore 3 for Windows,
right?
But I don't know but would there be a way to do it, render it in VS Code?
It wouldn't be in VS Code.
It's not necessarily a
view pane kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a VS Code specific thing,
right.
But we've looked into a web version of Outgrid View briefly, but we just don't want to get bogged down spending lots and lots of time re-implementing web servers and things to make Outgrid View work, especially if .NET Core bit by bit porting things to .NET Core so that they work.
It's going to be Windows only though.
Right.
Which is going to be a problem.
Right. But the Outgrid View investment, I think, is down the track for us.
Yeah. I think I'll just say that we're well aware that people want Outgrid View. We've talked about a lot of different ways, but we don't have a solution at this point, or cross-platform anyways.
Cool. And yeah, Darwin, I understand. I'm certainly not excited about a new package format, but I don't know how we get what we want out of MSI without wasting lots and lots of time. Semi-working OS 10 OGB. Oh, interesting. Got to check that one out. Check out, let's say, Outgrid View. 3.0 Windows. I'm just making notes to myself to go and fix this later. And then you said possible web implementation to do OS, Mac OS, OGB on Slack. We'll just do the heck out of this thing.
So we looked at a few things, right? Like Adam Driscoll's ultimate dashboard, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's
Universal dashboard.
Universal dashboard. But there's no.
Yeah, I actually did see this at some point.
There's no simple thing that we can ship. Even if we ended up putting something like Outgrid View, because it has to be responsive, we would have to basically bundle ASP.NET Core.
Have you seen this?
Is this Joel's thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Was he going to get done Joy on there?
Okay.
It does not look like he is.
Okay.
Different Joel.
I know he was looking at another console framework that I wasn't familiar with. That had it has some interesting reuse of XAML. And, it'd be great if the community provided something.
Yes, it would be awesome, because we do think that this is one of those ones that there are many opinions on it, and I think there are many ways to do it.
This would be one of those great examples where I think having a number of different solutions from the community and then like the best of breed can come out and we can see innovation and all the good stuff.
Yep. Okay. This was a GUI version. Yeah, I want to still check that out. I think it was SIFB. Okay. Cool. So let's talk about functions for a minute. So I think it's been no secret, if you're really paying attention to a lot of the Microsoft Azure repos, that I've been spending a considerable amount of my time. I've got Dongbo in the room as well, and Tyler too, on helping to implement a PowerShell language worker in the Azure Functions 2.0 service. So for those of you that are not familiar, Azure Functions is a serverless. I'm going to try and take notes as I talk here and not zone out. But it is a serverless platform as a server or as a service service in Azure. This is like way too many S's, but you get the idea. It basically gives you, it's akin to AWS Lambda in that it gives you a box or you write code. And then, that code is supposed to execute without you having to think about infrastructure or dependencies or any of the other sort of difficult aspects of managing a service. So typically these are done as webhooks. They also support timer triggers and a long tail of other triggers that will essentially be the thing that invokes the function. But typically they're webhooks. They get some header, data passed to them as any REST API would, and then it does some work on behalf of that and emits some JSON that represents whatever output you're trying to pass back to the user of the API. The timer trigger just runs on a schedule, like a scheduled task, and so these are ways to sort of have a micro service architecture of chaining these REST APIs together, but it also works very well for IT automation in terms of wanting to do things on a specific cadence or when people click a button on a website or whatever. So today, to cut to the chase, we have a limited implementation of this working. Anyone who is interested in trying this out, especially over the holiday season, feel free to raise your hand in the chat, and I will raise your hand. Maybe I don't want to take. I have all your emails as long as you've accepted the ICS, so you don't have to paste your email in the thing and then have your email get published to a GitHub repo. Basically, we'll set you up with some instructions. This is all technically still under NDA, so we would appreciate everybody's discretion there. But we are taking feedback already in the let's see, Azure Worker. Yep. So we have an Azure Functions PowerShell Worker repo. Theoretically, if you are very intuitive, you can go and try some of this stuff out even without my instructions by using some of the Azure Functions core tools. But we've got some stuff working. We've got a series of issues that are sort of planning around when we're planning to make a public preview. So if you look at this milestone here, you can see what we're trying to get implemented up to that point. But today's is running on Linux dedicated, which means that you have to pay for your own infrastructure and everything's running on the Linux operating system. We will soon have support for the Windows consumption model, which I think is probably more exciting to folks. That's the one where you sort of pay by the minute for the function and you don't have to manage your own app service instance. So again, hope that more and more folks kind of check this out. It's a really cool way. This is all PowerShell core today. So this is like why we built PowerShell core, was to be able to do stuff like this very easily. And it's clear that our investment paid off there, because we were able to get a minimum viable preview working pretty quickly here, just a couple of months. So I will add Michael B. Smith. If anybody else thinks of it just or decides later that they want to join, shoot me an email. Ask me on Twitter, and I'll make sure that you get a set of instructions for that. So. Cool.
Ambo, do you want to answer the question about dollar return?
We don't support dollar return today, and but it's possible we're gonna support it if we eventually gonna support the durable function, because durable function, the activity functions in durable functions depends on dollar return to return the stuff to the orchestration function. So whether to support dollar returns or not depends on our needs and feedback, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a question here about what our implementation would look like. There's one which basically says, hey, everything in the pipeline. And for those of you, I'm going to reiterate the question. So dollar returns is like a magic variable in Azure Functions that, for all the other languages like C#, you finish a function and you return a value. That returned value is what gets put in dollar returns. Unfortunately, in PowerShell, we have our wonky return semantics. And so when you run return, all you're actually doing is passing something to the pipeline and then exiting a function. And because of that, we don't actually know whether or not a single item has been returned. We don't know that you actually called a dollar return or called return as opposed to just passing something to the pipeline, because we're just intercepting the pipeline and reading from it. So we could put everything that hits the pipeline into dollar returns, or we could just put the last item in the pipeline in dollar returns.
Yes, by the way, Lambda does the latter.
They do?
Yeah.
They only do the last item?
Yeah, they only put the last one.
Everybody said I was crazy for that one, right? They might be crazy too, but yeah, so we could do just the last item in the pipeline, or we could offer some mechanism for putting stuff into dollar returns, right? We could call it return dash functions or whatever. I don't know. It's not a verb, but you get the idea. We could come up with some command line name or function name that would allow you to push into dollar returns as this special variable. So a lot of different ways we could do it, but we know that at some point when we support durable functions that we're going to have to do this. Yeah, I 100% agree, Joel. This is what we this is why we are having this conversation, because I think, unfortunately, depending on how you define consistency, all of these things could possibly be paths that we take. It's really there are just some things between functions and PowerShell that do not map one-to-one semantically, and so we're grappling with that. Michael, you're saying there's an RFC on dollar returns in Azure Functions?
I don't recall us publishing such a thing. I think there's an issue.
There's a big issue.
There's an issue right now.
Yes.
Yeah, if we go to, yeah, this is where this one's currently being discussed. Just as an FYI. No worries. This is, well, Tyler wrote this almost like an RFC, so yeah. This is, I can see why you'd have been mistaken. But yeah, we typically only do RFCs for the stuff in PowerShell itself. So we try not to, there's stuff with the community of PowerShell and that sort of thing, but like Azure Functions is not a, governed by the PowerShell organization. Cool. Did we already talk about the VS Code extension release? Did you want to say any more on that, Rob? Just what went into the release and what?
Yeah, we released it this morning just because there were some bugs in the folding, and a couple of crashes introduced by the new reference following stuff. So basically the previous release introduced the ability to follow PS strip root for references, stuff like that, but had some unintended consequences. So we just did a quick release for the end of the year so that we've got a bit more stability. And so the folding actually works nicely. We've been churning on the folding a bit, but the I think the final outcome is that now it actually is based on what the PowerShell parser says rather than the syntax highlighting stuff. So that means that even when the syntax highlighting looks a bit funny, your folding will be correct because it uses the actual canonical PowerShell parser, which, you know, PowerShell's a hairy enough language sometimes that that's a big enough deal.
Totally. Cool. Well, I think at that point we want to open the floor up for any generic questions. Again, I think we want to give you guys some extra love for showing up in December. So if there's anything, what's that?
Late December.
Late December. Yeah, exactly. I looked at the calendar today, and it's the 20th, and that's not great for my own personal sort of
Shopping.
time management stuff. So hopefully you guys are doing better than me. But anyway, are there any questions about PowerShell? Anything that you guys would want to take the floor for 5 minutes and complain about because you've wasted your whole week on some stupid bug?
And you can also bring up like gallery stuff because we got Sydney on the call. You can bring up doc stuff. We got Sean.
Who do we have?
This is Darwin. I was going to say I saw some interaction on the issue of a command line editor, a console-based editor. Has there been any more discussion of that?
I did see that Twitter conversation, yes. So basically, hey, it's great that we have SSH now in Windows. It's awesome. We can remote into boxes and then not edit any text files on them. Yeah, I think, we'll likely, I haven't actually sent any mail on that conversation. I would like to engage with some of the folks that we know very well over in Windows that were responsible for shipping tar and curl in Windows. And I think that, it's probably their charter from within Windows to take up. I think it totally makes sense. I have no idea what the proposal would be there. I know you're going to run into all kinds of religious wars there about which things should actually end up getting shipped. Whether it's Pico/Nano or VI or Vim or Emacs or whatever.
No VI.
I mean, I would love
VI.
I would love for Vim to show up, but I fully expect people to go, well, a lot of our users aren't going to understand how to use Vim right off the bat, and we don't want to make it, they'll never be able to acquit the thing. So I don't know.
Vim's a lot better over Emacs.
What's that?
Vim's a lot better than Emacs.
It's true. Yeah, Emacs is impossible to close. I still can't. I have no idea.
If you Control Z and then kill off.
I actually have had to do that several times. Yes.
I think Nano's really cool, but I had heard there was licensing problems.
I would expect there to be, I don't know if this was, I can't necessarily speak to this in great detail, but I think it is telling, that the two utilities that we shipped, curl is MIT licensed and not associated with either the BSD or the Linux projects, and the tar that we shipped is not GNU tar, it is BSD tar.
What about just providing something where all of these could be compiled there by somebody else as opposed to? Is there a way? Is there something missing from the console that would kind of enable all of it, or?
It will work. I mean, if you go put, you can download.
Nano. Yep.
Well, Nano or any of the Cygwin compatible stuff will work over a remote session. It better because we did all the crazy VT100 work in both the console and in SSH, so that stuff will be compatible. So theoretically, I know Jim, for instance, uses GVim, in his or is it just GVim wrong? I don't know. G stands for
I
necessarily,
think he
but
uses GVim.
it's the
I use
console
Vim.
one. It's the console one.
Oh, Vim. That's
No,
no.
it's just Vim, just plain old Vim.
That's right.
And he uses it every
It's
day
not great.
to do his
The
work.
colors are crap, but it works.
He has a custom Vim profile for 20 years or whatever.
But Keith has brought up that if you have Git on Windows, it comes with Nano and Vim already.
Yes.
Does it come with it only if you check that box though? Because I don't think I have it.
I think
Or is it just it's that it's not added to the path?
Right, it's not added to the path.
So it's like it's in here. Oh, it's not in there.
Uh,
It's probably in MinGW. There it is.
wow, with everything else.
No Vim. No Nano. What? That's no fun.
see, under user bin.
Oh, in user bin because it's not part of MinGW. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here, man.
Yeah.
They just give you everything. Look at that. I've had Vim all along.
That's right.
That's going in my profile today. Thank you, Keith. And it looks like there's a Nano too. Oh yeah, look at that, sweet. Just typing arrow keys. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So yeah, well, I will raise that one. It's probably not a conversation that will get started until the new year. So Rob is dying hysterically at your comment, Michael. I don't know why it's so funny, but but yeah, we'll get started with those folks in the new year and find out what their thoughts are there, because I'm sure they've been getting asked the same stuff from other corners of the world. So yes, thank you. Text editor for remote sessions on Windows.
Or just console for the console. Should work in remote or local.
Here we go. Now we've got is it too late in the year to ask after lengthy PRs, and should I wait until next year? Probably. Unfortunately, a ton of our team is gone. Most of the committee's gone. We're not making executive decisions right now. People are not doing code reviews. This is kind of the time that we try and, those of us that are still in the office, try and wrap up, stuff that we've not been able to get to for the last couple months. So, the new year is probably a better time for that. So Andrew says in Bash, set E is common to auto fail every time an external process returns a non-zero exit code. Is a way to implement something like this in PowerShell. Process invocation. We're using execution context invoke command. It's in scope to my module, so it's leaky. Broadly speaking, Unix interop still feels inconvenient because of quirks like this. It'd be awesome if we could implement better fixes as modules.
Well, on the set-E, we do have a whole RFC that we reviewed recently. It's one of the early ones, I think. Yeah. But nothing is in plan right now to get that implemented.
But it sounds like, could you talk to the scenario for just a minute, Andrew? Because it sounds like it's not necessarily that you want set-E integration, it's that you just want to be able to do this scenario.
I mean, I think the way we do it in our build scripts is that we have a invoke native function that does the equivalent, so it's not the equivalent to set-E. Yeah.
I don't know, Andrew might not have a mic available to him right now, but I think it's something we should definitely I will link to the RFC for set-E to see if any of that meets your needs, and if not, I would love a comment there so that we can address the scenario separately.
Yeah. Is my mic working now?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Great.
Okay. Yeah, roughly speaking, I just prefer using PowerShell over Bash, but when I'm working on these sort of Unix-y projects, be they open source or stuff at work, a lot of times, a lot of these processes, they use these exit codes to indicate failure, so I want to write a lengthy script that just, a non-zero exit code should become what I would think of as like a thrown error in PowerShell, and just bridging those gaps without using some sort of a wrapper function or something feels inconvenient. So, but I'll check this RFC out. So thank you.
Yeah, I think this RFC actually, now that you speak to it a little bit more, I think it actually does address what you're talking about here. And we have this table here where we came up with, based on what your this native command error action preference, what we might do with this thing. And there was much debate about whether or not we should take non-zero exit codes and wrap them in error objects, whether we should put them on the stack. I made the argument that this is not just about non-zero exit codes, but it's also about what gets written to std error. And so, I made the argument that std error essentially gets abused for all kinds of, ways, just regular old text output, and that we could potentially break things by trying to reformat stuff that gets written to std error. But I think certainly, having an exit code, the similar sed-e, we would want to do this sort of thing. Probably come up with a better variable name. But you get the idea here that you could omit this error and integrate more cleanly. So totally hear you. I think it's a totally valid scenario.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
So any chance the PS build PSM1 function start native execution can be a built-in function?
I don't know if I want to do that.
I think the fear is that we would have to then support it and maintain it, and then it's kind of specialized for what we're doing in our build script. But I understand the need for it, and it's certainly something that we would want to solve the scenario on. Like, we need it.
I know, there is a need for it.
Yeah. It's just, there's a broader need than
otherwise, after every execution of a native command, you have to check if the execute and all this stuff. Yeah.
Only when you
let's think about it. I don't know if my gut feel says I don't know if I want to see start native execution. But maybe it should be something part of like start process.
I was going to say, is this an improvement we could make to start process, or even just native invocation?
That might be better.
We've looked at just making it to native invocation.
I assume it's just break way too much stuff.
It's hairy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you've copied it, used all the time. I get funny.
Oh, I encourage that. I mean, go ahead and copy and use it. I just don't know if I want it as a first-class citizen in PowerShell at this point in time.
Great. So this, Keith, if you could just elaborate a little bit. So this is essentially because you're using some sort of CI platform where all PowerShell errors are captured and then get stuffed in the error log, and that stuff's going missing because it's just an error.
No. So can you hear me? I don't know if my mic is good.
Yes.
This was before we started using start native execution, or sometimes when somebody goes in and modifies the build script to add a call to a native execution, they don't realize they need to wrap it and start native execution. So when those exes fail, whether we're invoking Obfuscator or whatever, the build would just keep on going and chugging along and says, that looks good to me, and would pass. I'm like, what the heck? We go look at the log, it obviously failed. Why didn't it flag the build as failed? And so, that's when we started being more religious about using start native execution.
Got it. Yeah, and I think, again, I do think that there's, in my opinion, the right way here is to set something PowerShell wide. And to have some variables so that you don't have to go and re-educate users about how to invoke executables in the right stand on your head kind of way.
That would be much nicer. Yeah.
So we'll see if maybe we can continue down that path with this RFC, and then if it's still needed in some way, we can address it. But I think probably like executables ideally should just work when you execute them, and we should get as close to that as possible. So we'll see. But thank you for the feedback. Michael was asking about robocopy and psexec. Could you elaborate there? Oh, actually, sorry, I missed Darwin's first. The Windows tar is not packaged anywhere. Syscat Pro Portable only ships as tar-gz for Windows. So you're saying, I don't know that we package it anywhere. I don't know what Syscat Pro is. Can you elaborate there a little bit? Darwin, I think you're still on mute there if you're... We lost him. Again, I think BSD tar for Windows is somewhere. But if you if you pop this guy open and you say tar dash version, yeah, it's BSD tar. I think we probably compile it from scratch ourselves and ship it in, but you can go and pick up. I think this one will work. Complete package except sources. Like I don't know how up to date this is. It's 2.4.12. We're running 3.3.2. Yeah, unfortunately I can't help you there. I don't think, but it is it's BSD tar. So. Just as an aside, no need to discuss further to enforce exit code checking globally. I've done this, but it's total hack. Yep, gotcha.
Let's go back to the robocopy. Again, I'm not quite sure what's...
That's in reference to the last exit code RFC. I haven't read that one yet. Robocopy and PSExec include intelligence in exit codes. So if you just say it's non-zero and you generate an error, then they're going to get unreasonable errors.
Right, and this was my problem is essentially like the Windows world has not been as consistent on usage of exit codes, and the Linux world has not been consistent on its usage of stood error. And so both of those get abused like crazy, and if we globally set, especially as a default, if we globally set these things as error action preferences that are going to either stop execution or emit a bunch of red to the console, a bunch of stuff that is totally not an error message is going to suddenly, show up as an error. So I think that we don't want that to happen, and I think it's helpful that you've called out. I'm going to do this here, but you've called out PSExec and Robocopy as utilities that do this. So thank you. I think that was everything up to that point. What replace functionality of COM and core as horrible as it was? I don't know what replace functionality of, say, Excel automation or report generation or editing. So I think everything COM continues to work.
COM interop is in .NET Core.
Yeah, so you can do the exact same stuff with COM in PowerShell core as you could do in Windows PowerShell ideal. Would love to hear if there are any bugs though in that working or not. You can if your code doesn't work exactly as it did before, just file some issues and we'll look into them.
I think there are a lot of limitations in early versions of .NET Core, but I think even with 2.0, it's fairly complete. It almost unless you know something.
Do you know there's something major missing?
They have something major missing if you are writing a server component in, say,
So a server COM component.
Yeah, server component.
Okay.
COM server's component in C#.
Yeah, I don't.
But if you are just
That
using
seems less interesting from a client side.
Yeah, if you're just using PowerShell to do this COM intro stuff, then it should be fine. I think it should be fine.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not using,
As long as you're not trying to implement the COM server. And to be honest, I don't know who still does that.
yeah, the tar tool that ships in Windows is definitely what we consider official. If you, I'm not in PowerShell, so it's not going to work. Which tar? I guess I could have. Yeah, so this is our System32 tar, right? And it's the same thing with curl. We got System32 curl. That thing is MIT licensed. Yeah. And then, of course, we have our SSH as well, which is in the OpenSSH SSH folder. Yeah, I forget, but I like which better. It's just precedence or whatever.
You just like to say witch hunt.
Why didn't that work? Oh, because I'm in PowerShell, right? So I have to wear that .exe, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have alias.
Yep. One note about Common PS Core, WPS uses MTA, but PS Core uses STA. That is true. That is a multi-threaded apartment. Single-threaded apartment, I still have no idea what that actually means.
Yeah, it is the other way around. In most cases, that hopefully should not have an impact other than a perf impact to Marshall between those two apartments. Yeah. It's been that way for some time. I haven't heard any feedback that anyone's actually impacted by that.
There will be when Windows Forms comes around.
Oh yeah. That's true. Well, I guess we'll have fun when we move to
Hooray.
3.0. I think Bergmeister already has a PR open to move to 3.0 that we want to explore, but that definitely won't happen until after 6.2 release.
Oh yeah, that's a great point, Joel. So yeah, I was like, I have no idea where that would be documented, but you're absolutely right. I think on the because we have a wait, you can do it here.
No, we never did. We expose it? I don't remember now.
PowerShell has it.
No, PowerShell had there is a
MTI setting.
apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Doneco doesn't have any.
No, it does now.
Oh, it does. Oh, it's back.
It's back.
Oh my
The question
God.
is, do you want us to expose it again?
Yeah, SDA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from this page, we should.
That's for PowerShell or PWSH?
This is PowerShell.
Yeah, because I think for PowerShell Core, we never completed the work to expose the apartment
I
mode.
forgot the reason.
So Christoph says we had a perf impact
Reason
on
why it's not
PowerShell
open.
because
No one really has.
Yeah,
There's a whole bunch of if-def code still in PowerShell related to apartments.
the apartment stage enon was back and supporting thread in the thread type, but I forgot why we didn't do that. I remember tried, but we.
No, I tried it as well. I had a whole complicated
Yeah.
PR where I tried it, but the problem was after I just removed everything, things stopped working.
Yeah.
Like it didn't work correctly. I was like, I'm going to give up on this. So I have a closed PR that got it exposed, but it just didn't work. I didn't want to spend time investigating why. There's something I can't recall now that we use in common fundamentally that was needed. So might have been, I don't remember if it was WMI or something.
Yeah, WMI or WSMan.
Yeah, something like that, because those are all both com based. And it just was broken. I was like, forget it.
cool. Throw this one in the notes. Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Anything new on IntelliCode support for PowerShell? We've looked into it. We talked with that team. There's nothing to report on so far. It's very, 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 very early. We don't know if it makes sense yet.
Well, I think it's something we want, but it's not free. We're hoping to be kind of free-ish. It turns out there's actually a bunch of work. And, yeah. Post 6.2. It's definitely after the holidays before anyone needs to start looking at it. Looks like we're going to get kicked out of this room soon. But I think it's Zach, so it might be okay.
Yeah, I think we're going to get going here. Everybody have a happy holiday. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate everybody hopping on today. You know, again, like if you got anything on the any interest in the Azure functions, please let me know. And reaching out to Michael for sure. But anybody else, let me know. And yeah, happy PowerShelling over the holidays. Have a good one, everybody.